Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome to my workshop. In this video I'm going to be restoring my dad's number 4 Stanley plane. Let's get tinkering. I say this is my dad's plane, but when I dated it online it was manufactured in 1931 or 32 and my dad wouldn't have been born at that point. So he must have got it second hand. I imagine as a young boy he may have bought tools from a lad that was retiring, perhaps. There was no such thing as eBay, obviously, back then. There was no such thing as boot sales, which are probably peculiar to the UK in any case. So I'm not sure where he would have got it from. It's possibly his father's, my granddad's. I will never know because I can't ask him because he's passed away. But my plan is to restore this plane so that it's in a good working order. I've looked online and views about how to restore Stanley planes varies quite a bit, from just leave them rusty, they're collector's items, you don't use them, you put them in a shelf and you collect them. I'm not a tool collector. I want a plane that I can use. I know it's 90 years old, but I don't think there's really that much wrong with it that a little bit of tender loving care won't solve. And it was my dad's plane, and I think my dad would be happy to know that I was actually using it. Some restorers will make it as if it was factory condition, so you know all the sides would be polished and shiny, almost a mirror finish. I'm probably not going to do that either. I'm just going to restore it to a point that enables me to use it and feel satisfied using it and feel proud to own it. That is my plan. So let's get started. My first step is going to be to dismantle it. I think that should come out of there. I'll have to try and push it out with something in a minute. Doesn't look like it's going to move on its own. Well, it does move. It doesn't come out on its own for some reason. So let's look at that in a minute. That shouldn't be that tight. Oh yeah, that was tight. All these threads feel like the bolt is bent. It felt the same when I took the knob off the front. I wonder if that is the case. Tiny bend to it, but it's not too bad actually. That should come off there. It's not going to move at the moment. We may have to leave it on there. We'll see. The frog. Looks like there's 100 years of sawdust and stuff embedded in all of these bits. There we go, that's the frog off. So that's everything dismantled nicely. The next step will be to just clean all the parts with some hot soapy water and my wife's toothbrush. I've seen some people using a wire brush on a bench grinder to clean hand plane parts. But I wasn't that brave. I felt that a wire brush might damage the brass parts, and I also didn't want my fingers anywhere near a wire brush on a bench grinder. So I opted to use my rotary tool with a clamp at low speed using a small brass wire brush. I cleaned all the small parts with the wire brush tool before moving on to using a polishing disc with a little brasso to give them all a shine. So I'm now going to tidy up the knob and the handle. Both are in pretty good condition, but the varnish, I think they used shellac originally, is a bit scratched up. So I'm going to tidy it up. I'm going to probably start with wire wool, just see how that works. If not, I'll move to some 120 grit sandpaper, just tidy it up a little bit, and then I'll recoat it in yacht varnish. So I use some steel wool to remove all the loose varnish. It's actually coming up really nicely. I'm not looking to repair this to factory condition. The little dents and things in it are all part of its history. And there would have been things that my dad would have put in it over the years. So I want to sort of keep some of those, just to remind me that it's a tool that's been used for a long time. So I'm probably going to leave it there. I might do a little bit more off camera, but I think I'm relatively happy with this. I then concentrate on the main handle. This is some 180 grit sandpaper, because the wire walls, it's not really aggressive enough to get these scratches out. It was fine for the knob. So I've got all the loose varnish off. It feels very smooth and it's really nice to hold. Very warm actually to hold. It's still got all the little dents and scrapes in it. So I don't really want to completely remove those. I just want to make it a tool that I can use and remember my dad by when I'm using it. So I'm happy with this. I think I'll recoat it with varnish now. I'll just give it a clean to get all the dust off. I'm quite pleased with that. And here's the knob. I'm quite pleased with that as well. So it's not perfect, it's not going to be concourse, but it'll be fine. Just using a tack cloth, which I rub around everything to remove all the dust. I found it's the most effective way of getting rid of all the dust. And you can see, look, it's already looking shiny because those dusty bits have come off. I've already done the handle. I made these little handles so that I can put it in the vise when I come to varnishing it, which is what I'm going to do next. I'm using Ronsil satin yacht varnish, not because it's necessarily the best thing to use, but because I have a tin that needs using up. The knob's slightly darker than the handle. It's probably got more of my dad's dirty hands and sweat and grease on it over the years, I guess, even though I rubbed it down. It stained it quite a bit. I didn't want to take it all the way back to the bare wood really. I quite like the fact that it looks used, because it is. It is a 90-year-old plane. Okay, that looks lovely. I'm undecided if I should paint the inside of the sole on this plane. There's quite a few places where the paint has come off, like round here where I guess it's just worn, and a bit around the edges here. For now I think I'm going to probably just leave as it is. If you think I should paint it, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to know your views. Should it be painted or just left as it is? This blade has a few chips in it, so I'm going to start off reforming a bevel on here, and I'm going to use some of this 100 grit paper just to get it roughly right before I move to my sharpening system. This I also inherited. It's just a flat cast iron or steel plate. I don't know what it was originally used for, but it's dead flat, which is quite handy. It takes quite a bit of work to reprofile the blade and remove all the nicks and dents it's collected over the years. Does anyone know what this originally was or is? It looks like it's cast iron. It's got a ground flat surface on the top. It has a threaded hole here and the same the other side, and it has 3 legs. If you know what it is, I'd love to know what it was from or what it was used for. I've sort of assumed it was just a milled flat surface for, I guess, using when you needed a milled flat surface, but I'm intrigued to know what went here, what these were used for. If you know, let me know in the comments. Thanks. Now I have the nicks out of the blade, I start to sharpen it, first using the 400 grit surface with a little water to help move the slurry. I've just finished the primary bevel. It took quite a bit of time because there were a couple of nicks in the blade. But now that's done, I can move on to the secondary bevel, which, if the chisels are anything to go by, should be quite quick. I've never successfully sharpened a plane iron before, but I've never used this Axminster Rider sharpening station before either, other than to do some chisels which you saw on a previous video. So hopefully this will be successful. It's going pretty well at the moment, so I'm reasonably confident that it will be successful. So I think that's all it needs. I don't know if you can see that secondary bezel there. Quite pleased with that. There's only a few strokes. All that's left now is to remove the burr. No burr on that. That looks really sharp. The other thing that I'm going to do is just see if this back needs flattening at all. You can see it's coming off here and round there. It's not coming off here yet. I think I'll just carry on flattening it for a little while. Not sure if this is helpful for someone with my chisel skill levels or not, if it'll make any difference. But I've seen other people do it, so I shall try and do it. I'm almost there. The iron is sticking to the stone, which is a good sign. It means they're both very flat. It's not really aquaplaning. I'm just pushing down and using this to give it some circular motion. Now moving on to stropping. This is the thing I'm least confident about. There appears to be quite a lot of different techniques for stropping, and I'm not sure what the right technique is. The Axminster way, according to their videos, is to find the bevel and pull back I know some people put a lot of pressure on, which is what I'm doing. Although it's still getting cut up here, which is not a good sign. And some people say do this 40 or 50 times, but Axminster seem to only suggest several times. So that's all I'm doing it. Okay, I'm going to assume that's done. I've never done this before, so I don't know how easy it'll work, if at all. Seems pretty sharp to me. What do you think? If you've got a method for testing how sharp something is, leave it in the comments. For the cap iron, I simply use the Brasso polish to give it a bit of a shine. I use the sharpening system to remove the surface rust off the frog and ensure the surface is very flat. This doesn't take very long. The sole of the plane has a little bit of corrosion on the sides and on, I guess, the sole. I'm not going to do anything about that until I've put the rest of it back together, just in case it twists or changes the shape of this part of the plane. So my next job is to put everything back together. It doesn't take long to reassemble the plane. I'm not putting the handles on yet, as they are still drying. I can now start working on de-rusting and levelling the plane. It's almost there. All this area here is flat, and this area here is flat. This here is a little bit shallow, and through the middle here is a bit shallow, and there's a bit shallow, and round the back's a bit shallow. But I would say probably half of it, I've still got to rub it down, but half of it is flatter. The more of it becomes flatter, the more I continue to do this. The scratches in the sole take a lot of time to remove, and it's clear the sole itself isn't very flat, but with perseverance we can fix those problems, which means it should perform better than it did when it first left the factory. Well, flattening the sole has taken a significant amount of time. All of the scratches that were in it were quite deep, and the sole itself wasn't flat either. As a result, I've spent many hours trying to get the sole flat, and I've now got it to a position that I think is pretty flat. I think the reason for the damage was my dad was a plumber, and the only time I can ever remember him using a hand plane was to flatten floorboards, and those floorboards would have had nails in, and he probably went straight over the nails. There were lots of them, so he obviously did it regularly. The whole surface of the sole had scratches right across the length, in the direction you'd expect if you was planing across nail heads and things. So I think that's what's probably caused it. The sole not being flat, I'm not sure why the sole wouldn't have been flat out the factory. It had a definite dip in it behind the blade, but that's all gone now, and it's nice and flat. All I've got left now to do is the sides. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on the sides. I'm just going to clean off the rust, and then I'll finish putting the rest of the plane back together. I start removing the rust on the sides using 100 grit sandpaper, checking regularly. I move to 200 grit once I'm satisfied the rust and most of the marks have been removed. There are quite a lot of scratches in the sides as well. This plane really has been abused. It's now time to put the handles on. If your handles are loose, you can shorten the bolt by one thread, and this should solve the problem. I didn't need to do this on this plane, but I know I'll have to do this on my record plane, as it has a loose handle. So the plane is complete. It's not factory condition. Still got a few nicks and scrapes in it, but it's perfectly serviceable, and it looks really nice, and therefore it will be something that when I will use with a smile on my face, knowing that it was my dad's plane. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video about me restoring my dad's hand plane. I think I've shown that with a little care anyone can renovate a tool back to working condition, and this tool in particular is probably in better condition than it was when my dad used it. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, then please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, why not subscribe by clicking my logo? It's free, and YouTube will add some of my videos to your feed. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.